from a fist pump at Maydon to beautiful Belmont Park on an overcast Sunday morning. Quite chilly here on our third-floor TV set. Delighted to have your company. In the meantime, though, we'll warm you up here on this latest edition of the National Racing Report. Jason Blewett, Andy Serling, Richard Migliore vying on the outside. And although Mother Nature, for a change, didn't cooperate, the racing here this past week was terrific.
Absolutely. I mean, you got big races. It's lousy weather. So what? You know why you have some great weather? We saw some great racing, Richie.
Well, that's why they call racing the greatest game played outdoors. It is a seasonal kind of thing, and we go through the weather, and you know what? It's autumn. What did we expect?
And these Breeders' Cup preps, speaking of autumn, and we are in the fall season at Belmont Park, are picking up in intensity. We're less than a month out from the Breeders' Cup, the first ever at Keeneland, and this will be a Keeneland and Belmont-centric show, but we do begin, of course, with Saturday's 97th running of the $1 Million Jockey Club Gold Cup. Sloppy main track after basically 4 inches of rain in the New York area last week, and Tonalist always essentially was moving forward in this race beneath John Velasquez.
He was, but I think I want to say a couple things about other horses. First of all, I love the ride Joel Rosario gave Wicked Strong. Being aggressive from the start definitely contributed to a second-place finish. And I'll say something else. I don't understand what the tactics were of Coach Inch. And I say that, and Jason knows, I didn't like his chances in this race, but they were completely compromised by being taken out of the race. He's fourth now. He ends up behind Tonalist early. What chance did he possibly have with that position?
I was shocked when we watched it last night, Jason and I, that he was, by the 3/8 he was behind Tonalist and FNX. And there's no way I could have ever envisioned that happening. I thought he'd be 1-2, at worst third. And certainly I agree with you. Wicked Strong got an aggressive ride, but I think he was very good. He was really on his game, like we talk about. He left the gate with intention. And I think the outside post position usually is a detriment, breaking on the turn, the mile quarter. I think it was a bonus, a plus for Tonalist, because he's not a horse that jumps with it the first eighth of a mile, and then he kind of gets in the bridle and takes him. And it gave Johnny Velasquez the luxury of not being worried about getting squeezed between two horses.
Yeah, no, I think that's very, very good point. And also having the outside position, Jay, I think that helped him as well.
And considering Tonalist is already, or was already, a multiple Grade 1 winner, having won the Belmont and Gold Cup as a 3-year-old, it's been amazing to see sort of his maturation along with John Velasquez. It's really been a work in progress this season regarding those two as a team in big Grade 1 races.
Well, I think it took Johnny a couple of starts to really figure out how to ride him, because he is a horse that, like I said, the first eighth he's a little bit lackadaisical. Then he kind of gets in the bridle, and Johnny I think was tending to peck on him a little bit, like, hey, are you there? Get in the bridle. And then he would overdo it. Well, I think they figured each other out, and it worked out just right. And Andy, I was taken with how much this horse has grown up even over this year. He is bigger and stronger now, and I thought this was super impressive.
No, it was a very impressive effort by him. I'm going to be honest with you. I don't know how much better he ran than he did in the Whitney. He just didn't have Liam's Map and Honor Code in front of him in that race. I think it shows how good those horses are, but there's no question he's grown up as a racehorse. He's faster than he was last year, and this was the crowning achievement of his year. Obviously, if he could win a Breeders' Cup Classic, that's the crowning achievement of his career. But still, no matter what happens, he still had a very good 2015.
Well, think about his resume with the Belmont Stakes, 2 Jockey Club Gold Cups. I mean, he's a seriously good horse, but I think this underscores his affinity for Belmont Park. I think the wide sweeping turns are good for him. I question going to Keeneland how much he's going to like that place, because the turns are so much tighter.
We'll see what happens. We'll see how that race develops. I still think he is a horse, and I don't think you're saying he doesn't, who has a chance. At the end of the day, he ends this year with a second in the Met Mile, a third in the Whitney, and a win in the Jockey Club Gold Cup. That's a record that most horses would strive to have. He just lost a better horse, and I think it accentuates how impressive Honor Code's year was that he won both the Met Mile and the Whitney.
Yeah, those two are the two marquee races, but I think Tonalist, and I do like Tonalist, and I'm not saying he doesn't have a chance at Keeneland. I just question how much that's going to help him or hurt him.
Fair enough. We'll see what post he gets. Christophe Commont's done an outstanding job, though, in the 5th Grade 1 winner on the year for Tapit. Now let's see what Honor Code did. 2 separate races on Super Saturday. A means to an end for both the Breeders' Cup Classic in regards to Tonalist and Honor Code, who just didn't get much pace, and this was just the wrong setup, but a perfect storm on the front end with the Peeling Tail, who came in from the West Coast.
Well, Jason, we talked about it in the Prattle. This was no surprise. The this race played out the way it did. Honor Code was way up against it, and he was too close as it was even right now. And I thought subtly Joel Rosario did something very good there. He sensed that Honor Code was inside of him. He's riding Red Vine, and he said, I've got more speed than Honor Code. And he let his horse go out a little bit, and then he closed off the rail on Javier, and he forced Javier on Honor Code to have to take him towards the outside. But the truth is, Richie, this race was absolutely over when Appealing Tail went the first quarter in 23.5.
Yeah, half in 46-1, and then you could just let him run from there. And I like what Joe Talamo did. He got a little separation. He allowed his horse to roll on. Don't allow those horses that to get their advantage back. Take advantage of your tactical position. And Appealing Tail was good on the day, but I think he got a very sweet trip. And I question now he'll probably go in that two-turn mile. Yeah, and now this is interesting. We're looking at the chart. Start good for all, but Honor Code, Red Vine, My Loot. Actually, the winner, Appealing Tail, broke worse than those three horses.
It's a nonsensical comment. It's distracting and shouldn't be out there, and it just continues to keep going on. I don't understand why. I like what you said about how he uses speed. And the truth of it is, this horse has shown he might be best at a mile because he might be able to relax in those spots. He's now 5 for 9 at a mile. His career best buyers are 108 in this race and 106 in another mile race because he gets to relax. But I agree, the two-turn mile will be a much different story. Now, I'm confused. Some people are telling me it's a mile and 70 around 2 turns with 70-yard run up in Keeneland, and some people are telling me it's 7 1/3 furlongs out of the Beard course. Does anybody know for sure?
It's 2 turns.
It's 2 turns.
It's a 2-turn with the short wire, right? Correct.
With the first wire, and it is a long run up. It's a 70-yard run up, and it's actually more run to the first turn than it is when they run the mile at Santa Anita.
Oh, okay.
But that was the question going in. But they are running to the first wire into this 2 turns.
I'm glad to have that cleared up because I thought that was the case, and I heard yesterday it wasn't. Regardless of that, I think the horse that I want out of this race, the Breeders' Cup Mile, is Red Vine. Look, I'm a Red Vine fan, and I'll admit it, I'm a little biased, but I thought he ran very well in here when you consider the dynamics and the fact that I know he had a good inside trip, and the inside was fine, but I thought he ran very well closing into what was a non-existent pace in here. And I think he's a horse that can win the Breeders' Cup Mile. My question to you guys is, what do you do with Honor Code?
Love him as a horse, and
too.
The training job Shug McGaughey has put forth with him, not only in 2015, but his entire racing career with the patience and just backing off when he needed to. It's a training job I'll never forget. Mile and a quarter, however, against a Breeders' Cup Classic field that will likely be as tough as we expect it to be a month out. I just think it might be a little too much for him at 10 furlongs.
Yeah, I think it may mute that closing kick, too, and I don't know that he's going to get... I mean, he's going to get pace because you're going to have Liam's map. But is he going to get the kind of pace that he got in Saratoga? That's the question. I mean, he's so pace-dependent, and I never thought he wanted a mile and an eighth, and he proved me wrong. So I'm not going to say that the mile and a quarter is out of his scope.
I'm not going to say it is either. And I love Honor Code, and I would not hold that race against him even a little bit. But having said that, I wonder if he has anything to lose if he doesn't run well in the Breeders' Cup. If he has nothing to lose, don't run him. If he does, we'll see what happens.
And we'll see what happens. In fact, a toast to Greenpoint Crusader. Broke bad, took the slop, and was pretty powerful at Saturday's Champaign. Back to Belmont Park, back on the National Racing Report. Third floor set Sunday morning. The forecast looks much brighter this coming week. In fact, a high of around 70 on both Wednesday and Thursday. We hope to be back on the turf. It's the big Andy and Jason. Let's get it back to the running. In fact, from the gate in Saturday's 144 Champaign, Greenpoint Crusader came off in a tangle. He's the number 2.
He did come off in a tangle, and he's back in last, which really just exaggerates how well he ran in here. This was a very, very impressive performance. The 2-year-old performance by the Colts we've been waiting for, the best one we've seen in a stake race. The question is, how much did the mud have to do with it?
Yeah, I know. I think you're the opinion that it may have played a factor.
It certainly did. I don't want to take anything away from this horse. It's a terrific performance, but this horse is from as good a mud-breeding dam as you could find on the planet.
Well, the other siblings in the family out of Ava Knows the Code, who's by Crypto Clearance. You've got Justin Phillip, Keat Entry, who was a beast in the mud.
He ran third in the wood.
Going 9, and was able to stretch his speed over a very sloppy track against Bob and John. And Algorithms, who wasn't sound, and I think very tough horse to keep around, but he adored a wet track as well. But that being said, this was a very good effort out of Greenpoint Crusader. I like Andy's point, not taking anything away from the effort.
No, I mean, I really like the fact that he got off in a tangle, but he was shifty enough to get back up into the race properly, idled in traffic, took the kick back, eased out, and for me, my opinion, I think it had less to do with the wet track than it did with stretching out. I liked his first race going 5.5 when I thought he was uncomfortable sprinting, came back and won going 7/8, and now I think he's getting to distances that are really going to complement the way he wants to run. He's a big, long striding colt, and I'm not discounting that, yes, maybe he handled the mud better than everybody else, but I think for me, more the factor going further.
No, and listen, you talked about this when we talked about his maiden win, and I don't think anybody would disagree with you. This horse definitely wants more distance. I think it played a big role, and I don't think any of us want to knock the performance. It was the best stakes performance we've seen from a 2-year-old colt in this country, and in some ways he should be the favorite in the Breeders' Cup, but I just think he's a little vulnerable if the track comes up dry because we don't know if he's that good. On the other hand, even if he's 3 lengths worse, he still might be the best 3-year-old colt we have in the country, at least headed for that race.
That's an interesting point, and how about the job that Joe Bravo's been doing, winning Grade 1s, picking up horses, and Dominic Schettino getting his first Grade 1, and a very underrated trainer who at times has cracked with firsters. He seems to be able to get it done with all kinds of horses, and I really enjoyed the connections in the winners.
Oh, they were so pumped up. A triumphant return, and it was a big group. You had Vinny Viola, the Bonomos, and it was a lot of fun to watch with the Greenpoint Crusader. And let's get back to Dominic Schettino for just a sec. He spent his entire life on the racetrack, grew up in the Bronx. He's 49 years old, getting his first Grade 1 victory, and it looked like a decade or so ago he was on the cusp of having a real serious Kentucky Derby horse in Galloping Grocer.
Absolutely, and there's no reason. Give this horse a chance, and it's great to see people that we're fond of and to see them do well and to see them celebrate in the winner's circle. I want to say something about the fast races yesterday. This race got a 94 buyer. The last race was a bang-up race between a Linda Rice horse and Gift Box, a Chad Brown horse who had been third behind Portfolio Manager when he was second in their debuts. They got a 93 buyer hitting the wire together. This got a 94, so that was a good maiden race that followed up the card and was run off the Jockey Club Gold Cup. So we saw more than just one good 2-year-old colt yesterday.
That's the way it's supposed to be on Super Saturday. The 2-year-old maidens are supposed to be good, and let's get you out to Keeneland here as they were in action day number 2 of their fall meet with the Breeders' Cup looming in about 4 weeks, and here they come off the far turn in the Claiborne Breeders' Futurity.
You know, we always used to say, we'd say that the Derby and the Triple Crown is great to have Bob Baffert and Nick Cito and Wayne Lucas involved. It's also great if Dale Romans is involved. It was nice to see Dale get this win with Brody's Cause, though I know, Richie, you're a fan of the second-place finisher Exaggerator, who we saw win the Saratoga Special in Saratoga.
I like this horse a lot, and not to take anything away from the winner. I think he was a short horse. He ran like a short horse to me. He made his run, and you could see he visibly flattened out like a horse that just wasn't quite ready to get the mile and a 16. I think with this race under his belt, it's going to make him much tougher in the Breeders' Cup.
It'll be very interesting, and of course they have the race over the track for whatever that's worth. I think sometimes that's a bit overrated. You got to like Brody's Cause. I don't know how fast this race came up. I haven't seen the numbers for there. On the other hand, he made a big run from last in there, but I think in some ways that exaggerates how well Exaggerator might have run, because your opinion is he moved a little soon.
Yeah, well, he did, and I don't blame Kent DeZorbo.
Right.
An opportunity presented itself, and I always say I'd rather have a rider make an aggressive, what turns out, and I don't even think it was a mistake, but an aggressive move that doesn't work as opposed to being a passenger and being dictated to.
Real fast, positive that these horses in the Breeders' Futurity, if they do come back in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile, and they're likely to come back in that race, that they've got a race over the track, Mig?
If it was a fast track and the track was the same on Breeders' Cup Day, I would say yes. The fact that this was muddy, if it's a fast track that day, tracks change so much with the moisture content.
And I think it's overrated. I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but I think it's vastly overrated. A good horse will bring his stuff to whatever track he's on.
Although I think Saratoga does make a big difference.
All right, well, we'll talk about that next summer. 300-something days until we're back.
Thankfully, we won't be there for the
at
Breeders'
the
Cup.
spa. Let's move. It'll be chilly up there. Bundle up if you're in Saratoga Springs on Halloween and the day before. Here they come off the far turn in the Grade 1 Frizette. She's already collared at this point by Nick Day, a Scat Daddy filly, who is now a Grade 1 winner.
Yeah, I mean, listen, she ran well in her last race, taking heat down on the inside and repelling it. And this race, she was able to rate. And this was an honest pace. They went 22 and 346, and they were flying when you consider how slow the pace was in the Kelso. So the fact that she stayed on, and even she's already finished third, beating just 5 lengths, I think they ran pretty well, but it was a very, very slow final quarter.
It was. But I like that Nicknames had this kind of progression, and you could see her maybe even taking another step forward. But I agree with you. It wasn't, an impressive or jaw-dropping kind of performance. I thought the second-place finisher, Nemarelia, ran really, really well, kind of bottled up, took the kickback for a horse coming from Europe, and I think she can move forward.
And I also think coming from Europe, they probably would have been happier to get a dry track. That's not to say she didn't like a wet track, and who knows, maybe she wouldn't have been second on a dry track, but I have to think that was a good performance. The problem for the fillies is they're going to likely face Songbird in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Fillies, and all things being equal, they can't possibly beat her, which I think, once again, and we'll watch the race from Keeneland, the Alcibiades, accentuates a point we made beforehand. Tap to It and Rachel's Valentina both didn't run in the Alcibiades and the Frizette. They missed their chances for a Grade 1 before the Breeders' Cup. The Rachel's Valentina already has one.
Yeah, I can't disagree with any of that. I mean, Songbird right now, and then it's everybody else. And those are the two fillies that maybe have a chance to knock her off.
Yeah, nice to see Ellen J. Foxwoods get a Grade 1 win. Larry, Nancy, and Jamie Roth of New Jersey. They have spent quite a bit of money. They have a near $2 million tap at second-time starter running in a 2-year-old maiden race at Belmont on Sunday. Check DRF.com or NYRA.com for the results. We do know Go-Mo is by Uncle Mo, and he continues to just break all sorts of boundaries as a freshman sire.
He's been a terrific sire, and I'll tell you something else. My award for the best shipping trainer this year goes to Doug O'Neill. I know Rallis didn't run well in the Champaign, but he shipped to Saratoga, and he got the hopeful. He shipped to Keeneland with Go-Mo. He knew he didn't want to run last week against Songbird with this horse, but he got the money in the Alcibiades. She made a generous 5-1. Got a very good ride by Gutierrez.
He really did, and what $400,000 in Kentucky isn't spent as well as someplace else, but
right. Grade 1 in Kentucky isn't a big
and it's
thing.
A Grade 1 with the filly going forward. That's a ton of residual value right there, and she's by the hottest young stallion in arguably the world.
You know, I like Just Wicked as a horse that was impressive winning her Adirondack. She was a huge favorite going long in her next start, and I don't blame her for taking a shot in the Pocahontas at Churchill. Didn't run well. Bit of a wide trip here at Keeneland. Didn't run well. Turn her back to sprint. She's a sprinter with talent.
All right,
no doubt.
Let's wrap things up in segment number 2 with a look at Chad Brown's continuing dominance of the big Belmont Park Turf Stakes. Was 1-2 a week ago in the Turf Classic here, and wound up running 1-2 with Danza Cavallo, unable to hold off her uncoupled stablemate Stephanie's Kitten, who becomes the second filly to win the Flower Bowl in back-to-back years.
Now listen, Chad's a friend of mine, so I don't want to just pile accolades on a friend of mine, but you know, the job he's done with Stephanie's Kitten has been tremendous. And to get her to win 2 of these Flower Bowls, because it looked at points this year and even last year like her best race were behind her, and also to send the second horse Danza Cavallo to the lead and get second in the Flower Bowl with her, good job by him.
Great job. And Stephanie's Kitten at 6 years old, I think she kind of tipped her hand in the Beverly D that she was getting back to that good form, and I thought it got a terrific ride and trip, laid closer to a slow pace, and on soft ground you don't want to have to quicken up and make up so much more ground. It's hard to accelerate. She was very good. Danza Cavallo, another good ride from Javier Castellano, who to me consistently gets his position going forward.
Right. She got her best chance by being aggressive here, outrunning the Story Beauty the lead, making a concerted effort to get there and getting there. Curvy, she didn't run well here, to say the least. On the other hand, the 3-4 wide trip out in the clear didn't help her. But truthfully, I watched her European races. She ran like that in Europe, and she just didn't believe it or not, maybe she didn't love the ground, even though they say these Europeans always like it. Mutandis actually ran much better, and she broke in here, which she hadn't been doing in Europe.
I just question the ship. I think it affects different horses differently.
$14 million plus in the bank in the meantime for Chad Brown, and we've got a few races in the bank for you as we head back to Keeneland on the show. Back to Belmont Park and back to the action at Keeneland. It was basically muddy and sloppy all weekend in the bluegrass of Kentucky. They did manage to run a couple races on the turf, and I'll tell you, I happened to look up alongside Andy doing one of our prattles on Super Saturday when they were turning for home in the First Lady, and all I was thinking, who is that running away?
I know, it's amazing. And you know, after the 2 brutal beats this filly took up in Saratoga in our Diana and Boston Spa, it's nice to see her get a little daylight, but she liked to go, and Richie.
Boy, did she ever. I mean, to sprint home the way she did, and you know, think about the tough beats in Saratoga. That was kind of Mark Cassie's meet up there, wasn't it? And it seems like he's gotten back a little more to his comfort zone in Kentucky, and his horses are running lights out.
Boy, I mean, she was eased up at the end. This was some performance by her. I'll tell you, this performance was so good, I'm sure they're thinking about the Breeders' Cup Mile on the turf, especially being at Keeneland.
Well, and if they get soft ground, you know, I always think that's why fillies have excelled on soft ground. They're lighter. They get over the ground. They don't dig into it. So, you know, if you're 100 or 200 pounds lighter than a colt, you're not going to get as bogged down. You're going to be able to run over the top of it a little.
The other thing, though, about the Keeneland turf is unless we get a deluge for a week before the Breeders' Cup, even if it takes moisture, it's a much easier course to deal with, and clearly she liked it.
No doubt. And it drains very well. I mean, that's the way it was built, to drain really well.
And she has had a heck of a season. 4-year-old filly by Birdstein won the Just a Game a few hours before AP won the Triple Crown. And we'll stay at Keeneland. We'll get on to the Shadwell Turf Mile. And I can't think of one other horse Luis Saez fits better than Grand Arch. He puts in one perfect pocket, 3-wide run after another on this horse.
I know my man, the Mig, is annoyed because he loved this horse up in Canada, and he was getting all excited. He's going to talk about this horse in the Fox show. And then the horse scratched, and he watched this race. He went, I would have looked so smart if we were up in Canada if he ran. I tell you what, I love Grand Arch. How about the Pizza Man?
Pizza Man really ran big, and I guess this is his prep then to stretch back out.
I guess he is the coolest
BC
horse.
Turf, they're going to the turf with him, but you want to talk about an overachiever, and a good horse can come from anywhere. Humble backgrounds, an Illinois bred, he's an Arlington Million winner, and he finished up like a wild horse. Grand Arch is lucky the wire came when it did.
No question about it. I also thought Taurus ran well, being taken a little out of his game and coming back after running just a couple of weeks ago after he got really sick at Saratoga, winning at Kentucky Downs and coming back. He ran well in here from a tough outside post. And the Pizza Man is going to be the story horse of the Breeders' Cup. He's going to be a horse that a lot of people are going to enjoy writing about.
Well, the fact that he won the Arlington Million already, like you're saying, bred in Illinois, tourist, gets a little better ground, a little firmer ground. I like him out of the race.
Will he be being asked to do too much in too short a period of time going to the Breeders' Cup? And it's Bill Mott. He wouldn't run if he didn't think he had a chance, but I think it's a lot to ask.
I agree with you. It's a lot to ask, but the Bill Mott factor for me kind of negates that.
He's a good horse.
Bill we trust.
And he's a good trainer. Let's move on to the action. Judy the Beauty, been a good sprinter. A defending winner of the Breeders' Cup Filly and Mare Sprint. She was even money on Saturday in the Thoroughbred Club of America. She's in the black cap down inside.
Yeah, in fairness to her, and I didn't like her in this race, she's completely buried down the inside. I actually think she ran okay to be third. A much better effort than her honorable miss. But the truth is, this isn't that good a group. And overall, the distaff sprinters just aren't that good, and that's why if Terrace has her act together coming into that race, or cavorting, they're the 3-year-old, they're going to be very much the ones to beat, I think, in the Breeders' Cup.
No doubt, and I like cavorting the 7/8s and the fact that she's going to get pace to run at, and that could hurt Terrace. But how about the winner, Fioretti? That Ellis Park form continues to hold up.
Worked well for me. I bet on Fioretti.
All right, good job. You're one winner of the weekend.
Good.
Yeah, who do we have? Who is that?
I think you bet on that because
Fioretti.
the Italian Fioretti.
This horse was turning back off a win going long, and had beaten a horse that had come in here from Ellis that ran our Bell Dame last week, and she was outside of the speeds.
Then Shannon Doyle, the winning rider here. Good stuff. Good to see her in the winner's circle, getting a nice little prize and her picture taken on the Keeneland Turf Course for the Thoroughbred Club of America as we wrap the action up at Keeneland here. Let's backtrack to Friday once again. Wet weather again on opening day of their fall meet, but Run Happy stole the show on opening day. He was terrific in the Phoenix.
He was. I mean, he broke flat-footed. One of those breaks where you break on the inside and you're like a half slow, but next thing you know, you're a length and a half behind. And he just blew into the lead from the inside. They say his saddle slipped, and that's why he bore out here in the stretch. I tell you what, I think he confirmed his King's Bishop. We'll see what he does in the Breeders' Cup, but this is one heck of a horse.
I know his saddle slipped. I don't doubt any of that. I've never heard of a saddle slipping making a horse bear out. That's a new one on me. But okay,
it's the racetrack. There's always time for new ones.
But the fact of the matter is that Run Happy is very good and showed that race in Saratoga was not a fluke.
And he can run anywhere on any surface. He had a big win. At Turfway earlier in the year. He's just a cool horse.
Yeah.
I don't care what you say.
Yeah, nice story as well with Mattress Mac, James Mackingvale, Maria Burrell, the winning trainer, and Edgar Prado turning back the clock a few years with his relationship with that colt by Super Saver.
Good horse will do that to you.
Yeah, indeed. We'll get you on a good one. I'm taking your book after the show.
Oh, yeah.
Let's end things at Santa Anita. We've got the Santa Anita Sprint Championship from the starting gate to the finish line as a Masochistic. He was favored in this race, correct?
He probably was. He's had a disappointing second half of the year. But Kobe's back. I mean, it feels like we've said this before. He just can't get out of the gate, and it cost him another win. I know the race fell apart, and that aided his running style. But if he broke cleanly in here, he would have galloped.
It has got to be so frustrating for Peter Urton and his rider, Gary Stevens, because talent-wise, he was the best. He just compromises his chances every single time.
It's unbelievable with this horse that he's never gotten past that, yet he does it, and he still runs well. And we saw it in the Bayshore as a 3-year-old. We saw it earlier this year, and it just keeps haunting him. But I'll tell you what, they were flying up front in this race.
Yeah, they were flying up front. I question why Masochistic is so involved. He's shown the ability to sit a little
Inside
bit off
post.
Yeah, I know he's inside, but you got so much separation back to the field, and you're going 43-4. You know what? Go ahead. Let you go. I'll figure it out. I can't allow my horse to run that fast and think I'm going to have anything left.
Yeah, I mean, they were going so quickly up front. The Gray looks like he's going to swallow him up. Well, all he can do is finish a distant third in here, and Kobe's back the other Gray. He's on the far outside, but you know what? Bejarano had Wild Dude in the perfect position, and because he broke cleanly, he was able to hold off Kobe's back.
And because he was able to get that first run in that position, Kobe's back was the best horse, and you got to feel a little bit for Flavian Pratt, who was injured, had been riding Wild Dude, and Bejarano was able to get back aboard.
Absolutely, absolutely. We just hope he is able to get back riding soon, and he's doing okay.
And it goes back to Jerry Hollendorfer, the kind of operation he has built up over the last even decade. I mean, moving or migrating out of Northern California, and has a top-class group of thoroughbreds competing at Santa Anita.
He's one of the greatest trainers in the game. There's nothing else to say about it.
Two Hall of Famers started their careers at Ascot Park in Ohio, Eddie Maple and Jerry Hollendorfer.
Oh, good nugget there. We have time for the Arc? Let's do it. Trev looking for that unprecedented three-peat in the Arc, came up a bit short, checked in third. It was a Golden Horn, the Epsom Derby winner with Frankie Dettori.
You're going to see Trev go to the far outside. She's got that sort of silver silks and the red hat, the far outside. But truthfully, it had to be a paceless race. Golden Horn was sitting outside of the supposed pace setter for Trev, who obviously wasn't doing his job in the front end. The winner of the Sword Dancer, Flintshire, finishes second in the Arc for the second straight year, and Trev can't get past him today. She didn't have her kick, but Richie, it had to be something to do with the pace.
It looked like they were crawling, especially coming down the hill. Normally they really quicken up, and she was still running up on heels, having to steady along. And Frankie Dettori delivers an absolutely picture-perfect ride on Golden Horn. This horse has been amazing for him in Epsom Derby and Arc. Wow.
And I also think it helped him out. The ground was firmer than it often is for the Arc, and that helped his chances. But you know what? They can't take away what Trev did in winning 2 straight Arcs and even being able to be in a position to try a third one.
Pretty amazing. When you get a chance, download her Lifetime Past Performance Cut. Watch some of her race replays on YouTube. They are dazzling. We hope the show was just as good as Trev. Maybe not, but this was a fun half hour on MSG Plus. For the MIG, Andy, and myself, we'll see you next time with the QE2 and the Knickerbocker on next week's National Racing Report.